All right, guys, so this episode, we're going to learn everything about creatine, creatine supplementation, creatine absorption, creatine dosages, creatine safety, and creatine myths and crazy things you might have heard. We're going to debunk some of those and give you some of the facts about creatine and how you can use it to help your training. Let's get into this episode. I'm Billy Hinzo, and I'm obsessed connecting real people to real supplements. Let's get into this video. All right, guys, so creatine. This is actually an amazing supplement, and it is a natural supplement, so something that pretty much everyone can use, and it is also safe, although so many people are deathly afraid of creatine. I will often get moms coming in here going, my son wants to take creatine, is that steroids? And no, it is not. Creatine is not steroids. Creatine has actually been approved by the Olympic Committee since 2010. Just to give you a perspective on what that means for creatine safety, the Olympic Committee bans 2 cups of coffee consumption. However, if you ingest creatine, it's completely fine, according to the Olympic Committee. So they're probably the most strict in the world when it comes to requirements for their athletes and what they consume, and they approve creatine. So that should give you an idea for how safe this product is. So what does creatine actually do? A lot of people say stuff like, oh, creatine, adds water to your muscles, or it, makes you super huge, or this or that. A lot of just whatever stories about creatine, mostly because when you see creatine, you see a picture of a top 10 bodybuilder holding a creatine supplement going, this is what I take. So everyone thinks, oh, that is what happens. I will take the creatine, I will look like that bodybuilder. That is not how creatine works. Creatine is actually, it's actually a carb, and what it does is it creates something called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. And adenosine triphosphate is the energy molecule responsible for muscle contraction. So when you contract muscle, when you do a rep on bench, when you run a sprint, your body is using ATP. So what creatine supplementation does is increases your baseline amount of ATP. So why would that be beneficial? Well, the reason why you want more of a baseline ATP is, let's say you can do 225 on bench press, that's 225 pounds. Let's say you can do about 5 reps. After 5 reps, what happens? Well, you basically run out of ATP. You don't have enough to get through more reps. You can obviously do the amount, it's just the reps is what the issue is. So more ATP is gonna increase the amount of energy you have to move that weight. So you'll be able to crank out maybe reps 6, 7, and 8. So going from benching 225 for 5 to 225 for 8, for every set of every lift for an entire month or 2, that's a big increase in output. So this is why creatine is an amazing product. A lot of people want to avoid creatine because they're afraid, okay, I'm gonna gain water weight, or this or that is gonna happen. We're gonna dive into that. That is actually not one of the bigger concerns you should have. A lot of the myths about creatine causing kidney failure or liver this or that is when creatine first came out. Now keep in mind, creatine came out in like the mid 80s, and I'm pretty sure we've had some advancements in technology since, Terminator. That being said, when creatine first came out, everyone was mega dosing creatine. How much can I take? And it was used by a lot of enthusiasts, hardcore bodybuilders that are willing to do whatever it takes. So there was like, if you overload your system with anything, it's gonna strain your liver or kidneys, because everything you ingest, from water to any food you eat, goes through your liver and kidneys. It has to. So if you are downing, paint buckets of creatine, yeah, that's gonna affect your liver or kidneys, but it just inherently isn't going to negatively affect them, especially if you're drinking plenty of water. So let's just, get that myth out of the way. But what I do want to dive into is, like I was saying, how we've had scientific advancements. There's many creatines out there, and there are a lot of different ways you can ingest creatine to help your training and your performance. So the types of creatine that you're going to be using is going to be the big difference maker for what's going to make these products superior, inferior, better absorption, terrible absorption, and then also a factor that's going to play into it is how you just genetically respond to it. So I'm going to start things off with creatine monohydrate. So right here we have Golden Era Nutrition's Creatine Monohydrate. This is a basic creatine. It's the first creatine. This is the godfather creatine. It's been around forever. There's the most research done by it. So if you want to get a product that has the most stuff that you can look up, Creatine monohydrate is going to be that type of a product. That being said, creatine monohydrate has one of the lower absorption rates of creatine. Even though it's the OG creatine, it has about a 10% absorption rate. So you need to ingest 10 grams of creatine monohydrate in order to absorb 1. And 1 gram is what you're going to need in order to move the needle in the gym. Back in our pre-workout episode, I briefly mentioned how pre-workout companies often like to just throw in a gram of creatine so you can say, oh, there's creatine in the product. Your rep range is going to go up. Like, that's not really going to happen with 1 gram of creatine monohydrate. You need to get a solid 10 to make a difference. So that's where, creatine monohydrate comes in, but it's also low absorption. Now, a big downside to lower absorbing creatines is some people genetically can absorb more than other people, but ultimately where you hear a lot of the myths about, your muscles take on water. What happens is non-absorbed creatine converts to something called creatinine. Creatinine or creatinine, depending on how you say it, is basically an allergic reaction to non-absorbed creatine. So your body's going to take on a lot of water to flush it out of your system because it needs it to get out, and in that process you take on a lot of water weight, but it's not actually adding that water so your body can use the water in your muscle. It is trying to get rid of bad creatine that didn't get absorbed. So that being said, you want to choose creatines that have a higher absorption rate so that way your body's able to take it all and use most of it with the very least amount of creatinine that's running throughout your system, because water weight doesn't really help anybody. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some other creatines too. I'll dive into our Tower Guard products. So we have Siege right here. Siege is going to be, actually I'll back this up a little bit more. I'm going to go into the details of how creatine is absorbed with the cell. So you have a muscle cell, and there's only a few things that are going to penetrate our cell membrane. And those things are, typically phosphates, lipids, and water can get in and out, and very small positively charged ions can get in and out, like super small molecules. So getting down to creatine, so the thing, our cell membrane is made up of what's called the phospholipid bilayer. So it's combined with phosphates and lipids being fats, and that's what it's made of. So things that are bonded to phosphates and lipids have a lot better of an absorption rate. It's slow, it takes a long time, but it works well. So our Siege product, this is basically the creatine monohydrate that we talked about before, but it's bonded to an ester group. So this is creatine ethyl ester. So Siege basically goes through your lymphatic system, which is your fats, and absorbs through the phospholipid bilayer. It's a very slow process, takes a long time to get in, so you have to take it morning and night, but the absorption is going to be much, much higher. We're getting into the 80-90 percentile of absorption. Another thing that we added in here is we added 3 phosphates. So we have potassium, calcium, and sodium phosphate. What does that do? Well, remember how I mentioned that your cell membrane is the phospholipid bilayer? That is going to be able to, because we have phosphates and lipids, speed up and enhance the process of absorption. So that is ultimate absorption. The thing is with Siege, you have to take 4 pills in the morning, 4 pills at night. It's a lot of commitment, and you have to take it every day. Same thing with the creatine monohydrate. You have to take that every single day. So if you want to see results in creatine, it's going to be a daily thing. It's not something that you can really, really notice right out the gate if you take it pre-workout, unless there's other special things accompanying the creatine to help it absorb during training. But so this is going to be something that you're going to take day in and day out, and what you're going to notice is your rep range is going to go up. That's great. This is not going to make your 1 rep max go up immediately. So you can't expect to take creatine and be, okay, I could bench 205 today and I'm going to bench 250 on Friday. That probably won't happen. But if you can get your rep range up with the lower amounts of weight, there's a lot better of a chance that you're going to be able to do 1 rep of 250 if you can do 205, 15 times. So by getting your reps up for the weight you can do is going to help translate into your overall 1 rep max increase if that's what you're going for. But ultimately, this is going to help you. This translates onto the field. Again, if you're a runner or really any kind of training, creatine will help because you'll just have that extra capacity to move through without having to reset and get all your energy back. So this is going to be a really good example of a good creatine that you can use for absorption. And I'll get into other absorption techniques later. Another product I brought is, Crea-Gainz. So you don't only have to take pill form creatine. There's powdered creatine. There's a bunch of different types. And the real key to creatine is taking it every day, like I said. But the way that MuscleForce does it with their Crea-Gainz is with Crea-Gainz, they add in a gram of beta-alanine, and they also add in the estrogen for absorption. So they're trying to piggyback a little bit on you taking it during your workout. So beta-alanine helps a lot during workout. It's also a product that if you take every day is better. They made this product so it's something where if you're taking it before your workout, it's kind of like a triggering point in your mind, like, oh, I need to take my creatine, I'm about to go work out. And if you do that every day, there's gonna be more of this in your system. So it's going to have a little bit of effect by taking it pre-workout. Ultimately, it's more important that you take it every single day. But the biggest thing is that they set up a time where, because it's, blue raspberry flavored, it's got a gram of beta-alanine, it's got estrogen, which is going to help absorb your BCAAs and all the other things that are in your potentially your pre-workout and other things you're using before a workout. This is going to make you remember, oh, I need to take my creatine. So that's a smart thing on their part that they did, making this kind of like a pre-workout type creatine. Even though really whenever you take creatine every day, it doesn't totally matter as much as you want to be using it daily. So that's kind of it for, a few different versions of how to take creatine. You can do powder, you can do, pills, and there's a bunch of different types. Just a quick recap on the different types. We've got, creatine diphosphate, so creatine with phosphates, creatine ethyl ester, creatine bonded to a fat group, creatine monohydrate, which is creatine trying to penetrate the muscle cell through just the water aspect of it. And then small positively charged ions, I'll kind of get into that. That's going to be covered with magnesium chelated creatine and Crea-Gainz. So those two creatines are really popular. They were really popular about 10 years ago. More studies have come out to show that they're more regular, more like the other creatines than we thought before. But basically, they invested a lot of tech into making creatine a lot smaller, so that way you can, and giving it a positive charge, so it's alkalized creatine, that's why they call it Crea-Gainz. So that way your body can absorb it quickly because it has very, very small with a positive charge. But they're also finding out that just creatine that you're using every day with other absorption techniques are basically the equal effectiveness. A really big thing with creatine that you want to make sure you're doing is doing everything you can to help it absorb. So getting a creatine supplement, sometimes there's going to be creatine supplements that have the absorption built in. Like I said before, with Crea-Gainz, they have the estrogen in there already. They also have some phosphates added in. That's going to help with absorption. With Siege, we actually have... So we have a whole dose of vandyl sulfate and RALA. RALA is... it's alpha-lipoic acid. Alpha-lipoic acid is basically a insulin mimicker. So insulin's what your body uses to absorb stuff. So amongst many other things that we can get into another day. But ultimately, the reason why you want something that mimics the absorption of insulin is going to help drive in the creatine. It's an expensive ingredient that you have to sacrifice to get in the product, but it enhances the absorption significantly. Also enhances the absorption of everything else that you're taking. So if you have alpha-lipoic acid combined with any other pre-workout, all the rest of your pre-workout's going in more effectively. So that'll help you in the gym as well. With creatine monohydrate, you're gonna want to, because there's no insulin mimicker or something bonded in here, you're gonna need to ingest this with, popular uses are things like, grape juice, orange juice, something that's high in insulin responsiveness, and then it's going to help shuttle in the creatine. Without it, the absorption is gonna go way down. So, and the big downside with this, or just creatine monohydrate in general, is just how you have to ingest a lot of sugar with it. So that is an old school way of doing it. It works great. The thing is if you get a creatine monohydrate, it's going to be way cheaper than other designer creatines out there. So creatine monohydrate, you can probably pay as low as 15, 16, 18, 19 bucks depending upon the quality of it, but you're not going to be spending 40 or 50 bucks on a creatine, or even 30 most of the time. So it's something where if you're looking for a really good price on a creatine, that's the best way to go, but you'll probably get better absorption getting more designer creatines as well. And there's a lot of purists out there that would say monohydrate is the only way you need to go. It's the only thing I've ever used. And they're not wrong. It's a great product, but there is technology that we have, it being the year 2019, that has increased the absorption of creatine significantly. All right, so bulking and cutting. Creatine is really often, because again, I'm gonna go back to the whole bodybuilder holding the creatine in a magazine thing that's stuck in our American minds, but people associate creatine with bulking. Like, I'm only gonna take creatine if I'm bulking. There's not a lot that you have to worry about with that, because first of all, even if you are carrying a little bit of water, you can immediately, like as soon as you stop taking the creatine, the water weight's gonna go away within a day or two. So that's not something that you need to be super, super concerned with, even if you are taking a really water weighty type creatine. But most of the advanced creatines that we have now aren't really going to add a lot of water unless your eating habits are bad. So if you have, a creatine HCL, a creatine MagnaPower, those are the two of the most common ones out there. Those are not going to add any water for the most part. So you can safely use them if you're trying to cut down, and part of shredding up is going to most likely be you at increasing your reps in the gym. So creatine is something that you want to use even for helping shred down. But a lot of people get scared because they're thinking of like, oh, all the water weight I'm going to get. But just stick with some really lean absorbing creatine, such as Creatine HCL or MagnaPower or Creatine Magnesium Chelate, and that will help you maintain lean gains throughout your entire shred. And then as far as bulking, it kind of goes into, you can care less about what kind of creatine to use, because if you gain water, you don't gain water, it doesn't totally matter. But the biggest thing with the creatine is that's going to help you, like for bulking or training, period, is going to help, but especially if you're trying to gain size, you really can't, I would wager that even if you're trying to go for a lower rep range and you're trying to really, increase your power, if you can train and increase volume as well as increasing your weight, I can totally see that translating into you putting on more size as well. So creatine is really not completely reliant on you being shredding or bulking at the time. It's really just for athletes that are trying to increase their performance, period. So this is really awesome. Like everything that we've been saying is, creatine is going to increase your body's ability to do more. You're going to increase output. Your volume in training is going to go way through the roof. That's awesome. However, let's keep in mind, what do you also need to be doing in order to make sure that you retain that benefit of your excessive training? You need to have proper recovery. So like in previous episodes, protein, we haven't done it yet, but glutamine, downtime, a ZMA, you need to make sure that you're getting the proper rest and recovery so your body can repair all this extra muscle. If you're just tearing it all up, but you're not putting back in the right nutrients and you're not getting the right rest, you're not going to see all the benefits that people talk about with creatine. You can't just take creatine and override the rest of your, unhealthy lifestyle. You need to make sure that you're maximizing everything you're doing in the gym, absolutely, but then also maximizing that recovery. So if you're thinking about getting a creatine, you need to ask yourself, do I have protein? Do I have glutamine? Do I have BCAAs? And come talk to us, or talk to your local store about what else you need to be using in order to maximize the effectiveness of you doing a whole run of creatine. So a lot of people out there think, okay, sure, you're saying creatine's a natural supplement, but I always make the joke like, well, you can't pull it off a tree and eat it. It's not. This is actually something you can find in food. So creatine is highly found, a really good concentration of creatine in steak. So you can there's a ton of creatine in steak. So if you've ever had big steak or something the night before training and next day you have a ton of power in the gym, that is not unrelated to the amount of creatine that you naturally got from steak. So it sounds like a thing that, so if you're one of the people that ascribes to, well, if my grandma hasn't heard of it, it's not natural. This actually is a natural supplement. So let's keep that in mind too as we're exploring creatine. All right, so dosing. Dosing creatine, this is something that's super important because it's also something that, just in general, when you're buying a supplement, you really need to make sure that you're buying apples to apples. And what do I mean by that is, a lot of times when you get a product, you'll get something and you're like, oh, it's a tub, or like it's a bottle. I'm getting a full bottle. It's a big bottle. At Kingdom, all of our products, we basically fill chock full to the top. So if you've ever gotten our weight gainer, if you've ever gotten a lean protein, creatine, We fill our products to the top. We make sure you're getting at least a 30-day supply. That's crucial because, you know, you might get something you're like, oh, this is 30 bucks. Well, I've seen one that's only, you know, $19.99. That's just the same thing. And then come to find out, you know, this is 240 caps. They're selling the same product, but it's 160 caps. It's a lot. That's like a 20-day supply or something. So you have to be aware that you're buying an actual full month supply. So let's keep that in mind first. Keep that in mind for any supplement. Pay attention to how many servings you get and how long it's going to last when you're buying something. I mean, that goes for food too, but just in general with supplements, it definitely applies. You can a lot of times feel like you're getting a ton of value because you get this big product, but that might not be really like what you need to get through a whole month. So with dosing creatine, you need to net a gram of creatine at least to be able to get the absorption effects that you see and read about in all the clinical trials. So for monohydrate, that's like a 10 gram amount you need to get in. You can get away with 2 to 3 grams of, you know, a Crea-Alkaline, a Creatine HCL, a Creatine Magnesium Chelate, or a Creatine Ethyl Ester, with it's still getting in a net 1 gram of creatine. So with those products, you need to take less, but you still need to take it regardless. But about 2.5 to 3 grams is what you need for the modern creatines, and then at least 10 grams of creatine monohydrate for a basic creatine. Age and when it's safe to start using creatine. People often ask me this just in general about, you know, protein shakes too. You know, when can my son start using protein shakes? As if it's like some crazy thing that they can't get started with. But basically, if you can have 3 or 4 pieces of pizza, you can have a protein shake. And with creatine, it's a little bit different. I mean, if you're just starting out weightlifting for the first time ever, maybe don't use creatine right away just to see what your body's full capacity is all by itself. There's not really a huge point to maximizing 0. So you want to probably get in the gym, train for 3-4 months to a year, then you can start using a creatine supplementation. People get really scared about like, well, I heard that, you know, so-and-so trained as 6th grader and he had a crushed spine, and I'm okay. You definitely want to think about what kind of training you should be doing for younger kids, and there really isn't any reason for a 6th grader to take creatine. But once you're probably a freshman in high school, sophomore in high school, creatine is something that you can consider using if you're already good and consistent with protein, glutamine, BCAAs, fish oil, multivitamins, and all the hardcore basics. Creatine is more of a capstone product, meaning it's something that's you're going to see its maximum effectiveness when the entire structure is built. Capstone product kind of means products that really shine when the rest of the structure is well done too. A capstone is usually like the headstone or something of a beautiful structure, and it's the most important piece, but it's only important if the rest of the structure is there. Capstone isn't really important if there's no cathedral or something it's sitting on. So, you know, you really need to make sure that you're getting all the other diet, nutrition, recovery, and supplements that help your overall recovery and anabolic rate before you add in a creatine. And because of that, I highly doubt there's that many 14 or 15-year-olds that really have their nutrition dialed in. I mean, I meet them once in a while and I'm always amazed, but usually you guys are eating Pop-Tarts and drinking chocolate milk and don't have nutrition dialed in. So let's get some other things dialed in first before you dive headfirst into creatine. But for basically the rest of everybody else, it's totally fine to start creatine whenever. Just make sure you're getting a really good version of it. Hey guys, I hope you learned a ton about creatine, how you can use it to help benefit your training, certain facts about it, maybe some myths were debunked. But also I want you to remember we're giving away protein once we hit 100 subscribers. So the way to enter the contest is go ahead and subscribe, hit notifications, leave a comment, like the post. I'm really excited about doing this giveaway, and thank you guys so much for helping us grow this channel. I hope you're learning. I'm really excited, and I've been getting a lot of feedback from everyone explaining how much they've learned. Please don't forget to leave a comment, or even better, reach out to me on Instagram, reach out to me on Twitter. I'm happy to talk about this anytime. You're not boring me with questions you think are dumb. Please ask them. I'm super excited to hear from you guys. We'll see you next episode.